Tall and Small Collection, Chapter 14, Negotiations. Of all the reactions available to him, Soren never expected himself to start laughing. It was a disbelieving laugh, but it was a laugh all the same. It wasn't a heartfelt chuckle, but it was more or less a breathy exhalation spasming with the shaking of his body. He looked down, shaking his head, as if the motion would dismiss his initial response. Was she joking? She had to be. He waited for her to say something, but she didn't. Ashlyn's silence denied him the relief he so desperately wanted. So he glanced back up at Ashlynn with an amused and stunned expression on his face. "That's not really up to me, is it?" Soren stated. His confusion rubbed off on Ashlynn as she stared at him for several seconds. She didn't look amused, and, in fact, looked a little off-put that he seemed to be making fun of her by laughing at her question. Soren followed up with a question of his own. "You're joking, right? I don't really have a say in what happens to me at this point." "Why not?" asked Ashlynn, a slight hesitation in her voice. "Is it because I'm bigger than you?" Soren was silent and watched as it sank into Ashlynn's mind. "You think you're trapped here." "I am, though, right? I mean..." Soren's voice faltered as Ashlynn cut in, an indignant look setting her features. "Sorry, sweetie, but you're the one who came back here after I watched you leave. If you had the strength to stand, or, heaven forbid, if you asked for help from me, I wouldn't stop you and would do what I could. So, whatever this trapped feeling you're getting is all on you, pal. And I don't appreciate you accusing me of being some kind of people snatcher or captor." Soren couldn't believe his ears for a moment. She can't be serious. She has me in a box and my leg is broken. But... Soren glanced back up into her eyes. Try as he might, he could sense no ill will, no malice, or menacing presence coming from Ashlynn. His gut feeling, which had protected him for so many years, was either sicker than the rest of him, or she was telling the truth. Both were equally possible. "But I did come back here, and she's taken care of me twice now for who knows how long. Would she really let me leave? Again? No. What if it's a trick? I don't want to make her mad, but that would probably be the quickest way to determine her intentions." Soren's mind focused on one other thing that Ashlynn said, twice now. Person. She called me a person. She doesn't want to be called a people snatcher or captor. She found a person the size of her hand on the floor. She doesn't see me as vermin. She doesn't see me as a pet. I'm a person to her. So, if I asked, you would help me get better and let me leave?" asked Soren, pushing himself up slightly against the box. Ashlynn shrugged. "I don't see why not," she replied without hesitation. Soren bit his lip. He needed to think quickly to ensure his relative protection. "And if I asked, I could lay some ground rules?" asked Soren hesitantly. Ashlynn nodded. Soren couldn't believe what he was hearing. "And you'd follow them?" Ashlynn partially rolled her eyes and sighed, an action which made Soren's hair stand on end in preparation for whatever was going on in her mind. Had he pushed his luck already? He flinched back involuntarily as she looked at him again. "Yes," she muttered. "So, what are these ground rules?" Soren's heart was pounding against his chest at this point. His breath halted in his throat. "I can't make too many, or else she won't abide by them. Hit the essentials. I can do this." "Okay. First," he said, summoning what courage he could. "You can't ask anything about me. What I am, where I'm from, nothing. Soren watched Ashlyn's eyes narrow, but she didn't interrupt. "Second, don't touch or grab me, please." Just the thought of being held while conscious sent chills down his spine. As Ashlynn opened her mouth and raised a finger to interject, Soren felt a compulsion to continue. "At least, not without permission." Ashlynn closed her mouth, curling her finger back, and set it in her lap silently. She's losing patience already, or, at the very least, she doesn't like the rules. I have to wrap this up quickly. Blast it, I wish I had more time. Finally, when the time comes, you let me go on my way, wherever that may be. Soren knew there were too many borrower rules broken at this point to care about them, speaking to a human being the primary one. Be that as it may, the circumstances could not be changed. Soren, body tense, watched as Ashlynn leaned forward and placed her head in her hand as her elbow rested on her knee. "This deal seems really one-sided," she grumbled. Soren's breathing increased rapidly. A new wave of nausea swirled inside him. "She's not going for it. I knew it. I have a slight counter-offer, which should work for both of us," said Ashlynn. "For your first point, you said I can't ask any questions about you. Does that mean all questions? Like, for example, how are you feeling? That's a question about you. What if you're in severe pain from your leg, and I can get you medicine or something that will help? What if you're having an allergic reaction, and I can help? A question about you prompts this, right?" Soren had to admit that no questions about him did jeopardize his recovery. He knew enough about first aid to patch up scrapes, bruises, and busted noses. Legs and arms were more difficult. "My proposition is this," Ashlynn continued, pulling a reluctant Soren into negotiating. "I get to ask you questions, but you don't have to answer them. Or, better yet, if I listen to your requests without incident, then I get to ask a question, like a reward. You don't have to answer, but I still get to ask. What do you think?" Soren bit his lip as he contemplated quickly. All things considering, it was a minor request which mostly adhered to his initial rule about asking personal questions. There was no way around it. Even though he suspected he could say no, Soren wanted to ensure each interaction was a smooth one. Seeing no reason why Ashlynn couldn't ask questions, and he avoided responding, Soren nodded. "That sounds fair enough," muttered Soren. Ashlynn nodded in return. "Good," she said softly. There was a buzzing sound which jolted both of them out of their unspoken staring contest. Her attention was instantly redirected to a strange, boxy device. She held up a finger and gestured to the door. "I have to take this. I'll be back. Oh, just so you can mentally prepare, we'll need to check your bandages and make sure your leg is healing straight." With that, Ashlynn left the room with the device, and Soren was alone. Soren didn't like the idea of being handled or touched, but the thought of dealing with his leg himself was slightly more unnerving. He had a limited knowledge of broken bones, and, from what he could tell, Ashlynn had more resources and wherewithal to do it. He could hear her in the other room speaking loudly. Whatever was going on, it was angering her. Do I really want to say no to an angry human? Not really. Do I really want an angry human working on my leg? Not really. Do I have much of a choice? Not really. I can't fix my leg on my own. I need her help. Now is as good of a time as any to see if she will listen. Concluding it would be in his best interest, Soren reluctantly made up his mind to allow Ashlynn to help him with his leg. Just as he did, Ashlynn entered the room with several large containers, at least large from Soren's perspective, and set them on the bed. Soren could see hooks and scissors and rolls of cloth as long as his leg. He swallowed dryly as he thought of all the ways those things could be used against him, but tried to breathe calmly and believe in what little trust the human woman earned as she turned to him. "All right," sighed Ashlynn. As Soren looked at her, he could have sworn that her hands were shaking slightly. "Question of the day. Would you like my help in changing your bandages and checking your leg?" Soren exhaled slowly and nodded, feeling a sickening acid in the back of his throat. Ashlynn gave him a hard look. "You can say no if you want," she said softly, as she turned her gaze away. "Consider this is me following Rule 2. "I know, I believe you," replied Soren, managing a weak smile, seeing this Ashlynn woman already trying to build some form of trust. "But if it's as bad as I think it is, Soren didn't need to say anything else. Somehow, Ashlynn knew how Soren wanted to finish his sentence and approached cautiously. "That's okay. I get it. If you could, I need you to uncover your leg and lay back," instructed Ashlynn. Soren nodded and laid on his back as he pulled the blanket off of his leg. For a human, and for being an angry human not too long ago, Ashlynn had a very delicate touch. Soren couldn't help but recoil as her looming hands and outstretched fingers reached for him. It was pure instinct, shying away the way he did as her fingers approached, but Soren had to admit he expected worse. His head swirled, and his breath was rapid, body screaming for him to get away. He resisted the urge. Barely. The way it went was simple. There were a few places Ashlynn left so she could easily remove the bandages. Soren, after several unintentional flinches, closed his eyes and waited for Ashlynn to finish. Each flinch sent a nauseating pulse coursing through him, and his leg ached and throbbed. Laying back and closing his eyes seemed to alleviate his nerves despite feeling the occasional pressure of Ashlynn's fingertips on his leg. When she had unwrapped his leg, he managed to catch a glimpse of the injury for the first time. Based only on visual appearance, it was not the worst injury he possessed. The area was bruised and swollen, but nothing protruded from his leg. There was a bandage near his shin where it had been pinched under the bar and had broken skin. The air itself stung his leg, making it feel like tiny needles. Borrowers were sturdy. Soren was well aware of this fact, and injuries tended to not last long on him or any other borrower he encountered in his life. Still, the damage done would leave him out of commission for longer than he wanted. With Ashlynn's help, Soren helped reinforce and stabilize the brace. Ashlynn explained, while wrapping his leg, that she was hesitant to wrap his leg while he was unconscious because she didn't want to cut off blood flow from his leg. Now that he could provide feedback, she could reinforce it and make it stronger. More importantly, it was reinforced to the point he felt confident enough to put pressure on the makeshift cast around it. Soren, the entire time, tested limits. He paid attention to Ashlynn's reaction when he winced or asked for a moment. Each time, she retracted her hands and patiently waited for the go-ahead, which Soren gave after a few seconds. Something else happened while he and Ashlynn worked in tandem. She didn't seem overly uncomfortable or surprised that someone his size existed. Soren dared not bring it up, but tucked it away. It made him wonder, though. Was he the first borrower Ashlynn had ever encountered?